Today I wanted to talk about the visa process that many have to go through to be able to work in the US, and how I've been able to navigate the visa process coming from Australia and working in the US. Initially I was born in Sweden, as I mentioned, and I had to apply for a work visa or to actually study in the US first, and then how I managed to move from US to Australia and back to the US again. So the visa process, there are a couple of visas that you can use to work in the US. Most people know of the H1B visa, and it's been heavily attacked recently, and there are many extra rules and checks to make sure that people don't get in if they are not supposed to come in and work on that visa. Like, a lot of people try to fraudulently come in and work and set up companies that had no income, and many other ways that the visa was being abused. And I think it's also been attacked for not being used the way it was intended initially, with people from all over the world coming in on the H1B visa. I think 93% of the people using that visa are from India. So if people from other parts of the world wanted to come in on that visa, they would have to compete against tens of thousands of other applicants from one single country, and it's hard to get one of those visas before they run out. And I think it takes about 3 to 5 hours before all the visas are taken, basically, when they're released. I think they're released in September every year, and around 60,000 visas are released and or are able to be used for applicants. So if you're trying to get a visa to work in the US and you're looking at the H1B visa, you're going to have to apply at the right time and basically have a job offer that will be available right at the time when they release the new visas. So it's really tricky to come up with an approved or a job offer right in September and right at the beginning of the release, so that you can apply. You might be able to apply and then just hope that you'll get a job offer before they start checking up on your documents. I'm not 100% sure how that would work, but usually you need to apply when you have a job offer. So that's the H1B competition, and it's very tricky for people to get that, as I mentioned, and their spouses. There's H4 dependent visa for H1B visa holders, and they can work currently, but that's also being attacked right now by the government. So they don't want to have spouses work with H4 visa. So that's going to change things for many people, I think. And there is another visa that I went to come to the US, because I had problems like everyone else to get sponsorship when I just finished school, and I got 1 year work card, basically. You get a card after you can apply for a card to work 1 year in the US after you graduate from a US university. And I used that to apply for work, and I got the work. It was at a big bank in Hawaii, and I was hired as a developer. And just when I was coming into HR's office to sign some documents for the employment, they wanted to look at my visa, and I showed them my work authorization card, and they just said, oh, we don't accept that temporary card, we don't sponsor people. So that was my first real look into how visas work and how they can affect your life. And I was on a student visa before, and there was no problem getting that, so I didn't know how hard or different it would be to get a work visa. So what happened is that I actually continued studying, and I went for a master's degree. And after that degree, I also got a 1-year work authorization card. And then I could continue working, and I finished that also without H1B visa coming up after. So I decided to go back to Sweden for a bit and work there. And while I was working there, I was talking to my girlfriend, and we were discussing like how should we get back into like another country where the climate is nice and they speak English, and I wanted to stay in an English-speaking country, so we decided on Australia. And Australia has a very different application process when you want to enter the country and work. So you could probably find a more temporary work visa there, but it was already so much easier to apply for permanent residency there at the time. That was around 2008. And when I applied, you had to basically show who you were, your background, what you had studied. Several factors played a role, and you got points for them. And when you reached a certain number of points, I think it was over 160 points or so, you would basically be in the first group to be reviewed to get a permanent residency card. So with background in computers and being of a certain age, a lot of things, I managed to reach that point, and we could apply for permanent residency in Queensland. And it took only a year to get everything approved, and my girlfriend had a good idea, or like I thought it was pretty ingenious, that we could use the 1-year temporary work visa that they have. It's working holiday visa, and while we're there, our permanent residency application is being processed, and then all we would need to do when our real visa, the work or the permanent residency visa, got approved, would be to exit the country, go to an Australian embassy, pick up our new visa status, and go back into Australia as permanent residents. So that's what we did. We went there, started work with a working holiday visa, which allows you to work work anywhere. You don't need to have it connected to a specific company. So we just moved there, and I found work. I had a car and a nice apartment with 3 pools and a tennis court, everything within a week. And it was just pretty easy to kind of get going there, and we didn't have much money saved up at the time. All we needed was to start working. So that was allowed, and we just worked there for a year. And then when our permanent residency was finished, or the processing had completed, we took a small trip, like a weekend trip to Fiji, and stayed at a hotel there, enjoyed the weekend, and then went to the embassy, picked up the visa, the residency, and then just moved back like nothing had changed. And then we could just continue working for as long as we wanted there, as long as we stayed in the country and didn't let the residency expire. And we continued living there for 5 years, and after 4 years we applied for citizenship. And with citizenship you can apply to the US using the E3 visa. And that's also something we discovered a bit later in the process. We wanted to work in the US again, and we were looking at what types of visas were available. And The E3 visa was fairly new. I think it was beginning of 2000 sometime that it had been created as an exchange program between Australia and the US. So it means that Australians can go to work in the US for 2 years at a time. It's not permanent, so it's not for moving there. Like on paper, it still shows that you are coming from a different country, like Australia in this case, and that you are intending to go back to live in your home country after the visa expires. And it also means that US citizens can go to Australia and work there for a couple of years and then go back to the US. The good thing is that it can also be extended indefinitely. So if you have a job which you need to have the visa connected to, you're working for a company that gave you a job offer, then you can use that job offer to apply for the E3 visa if you're an Australian citizen. So it's much better than the H1B visa when it comes to the application process, because you will be approved within days. You need to go to the embassy with all your paperwork, which you have to collect and do all that work. That's a different process, and then the application itself is really simple. So you set up an appointment. The employer has to do some paperwork, which is fairly simple. You can do it online. Get that approved, and you get a document from your employer. And then you bring that document with you to the visa interview. And you bring your passport, your Australian passport, or passports if you're two. And then you will get the E3 visa, and your spouse will get the E3D visa. So you need to be basically both at the interview at the same time if you don't want to go through a lot of hassle of having 2 interviews set up, and for them to basically go and dig up your other paperwork and match it with your spouse's documents, or however you do it, it's much better if you both go to the same interview, and you bring your paperwork and your tax documents, all kinds of stuff that you need that they will specify. And when you get approved, the process is really quick, so you get usually approved within days, and you're not competing with the rest of the world. So you will compete for about 10,000 E3 visas instead of 60,000 for the whole world, which are taken up really quickly. And these 10,000 available visas for E3, they are available throughout the year, so you can apply anytime during the year. So you got a job in February, you can go to the embassy in February with all your documents and set up the interview there and just have it done within a week, basically. You'll pick up your visa and your passport with a visa in it at a local post office, and it will take about a week, the whole thing. And when you're done, you can just bring that to the US and continue working there. So the only problem is that you need to be a citizen of Australia, and you need to have a job offer in the US. So you probably need to go there on vacation and look for jobs if you don't know anyone in the US already, and then say that, okay, I'm gonna just do my paperwork. I need a little bit of paperwork from you, the employer, and then you go to your country again, to Australia, for example, if you live there, and you bring them to the embassy somewhere. So if you're in Australia, the embassy would be in Sydney. I've done it in Denmark because I go visit family in Sweden, so I just take a train over to Denmark and do the visa processing there at the US Embassy in Copenhagen. And they're really good with the E3 visas, so it goes really quickly. They will ask you a couple of questions and you show your paperwork, and they'll pick out like 4 pages out of all your paperwork. You never know if they need something more, so you always need to bring everything, but usually they only need a few pages, like the job offer, some other documents about your taxes and your graduation documents from college or university, a few things like that. It depends on whoever you talk to, so you need to get everything ready. And then they will go through the process with you there as you stand in front of the counter, and they will ask you a few questions. And it takes about 2-3 minutes total. And when you're done, they will say that we'll let you know the final decision, and then they will send your passport back to the post office that you picked yourself, which is close by, and it has to be in the same country. So I had to go pick up my passport in Denmark a week after I'd been to the interview there. So after I got the passports back, it all went fine, and I've renewed it 3 times since then. Actually more, because I've also done a transfer in the country between employers. So that's a whole different ballgame, and it will take a very long time to do a transfer. Your E3 process will now be part of the H1B processing. So you will be just mixed in with all these H1B applicants, and the queue is really long. It will take maybe a year or more to get everything approved. The good thing is you can work in the meantime. So while you're doing the transfer, you can still continue working for your new company. It just means that you can't leave the country. If you leave the country with a transferred visa and you go to your home country for a week or any amount of time, you can't come back in with that visa because it was transferred. So even if it was approved and you have a new, basically you don't get a new stamp or anything in your passport, so you don't have anything to show to the TSA agents. So that's a problem. So it will show perhaps that your other visa had expired and you're now working at another company, and you can't show any documents for that. So that's a problem, and you won't be able to get back in, so don't try that. But what you need to do when you leave the country is to set up another interview at the US Embassy and show all the documents the same way you did before for the new company, and basically get a whole new sticker in your passport for this other company that you now started working for. So transferring is only good if you really need to start working at a different company and you don't have time to go out, do the visa interview, come back in, and you know it's going to be temporary, so you're still going to need to do all this work, which is not the most difficult part, is to go to that place physically and do the interview there. So it will cost money to travel, of course, time to get all the documents ready and set up the interview and just be there on time and with everything you need. So it's a bit of a hassle. I've done it 4 times, I think, maybe more. And it always works if you have everything the way they expect it to be. And the company is in order. Maybe I shouldn't say always work, because it always worked for me, but if you do everything right, the chance that you will get approved is really high. And I haven't heard of anyone that has been denied an E3 visa yet. And I'm working with another person at my current company, or the company I work at now, that is also on an E3 visa, and he's also an Australian, born in Australia. And he had to go through the same process as me, even though he's born in Australia and I was naturalized into Australia. So that doesn't change anything, obviously. You just need your passport. And when you get the E3 and E3D visa, if you have a spouse with you, you will be able to go both at the same time into the country and show up at the TSA agent's desk and explain who you are and what you're going to do in the country and work as software developer, for example, if that's what you're doing. And just talk about the company, where you're going to work, and they will check that you haven't overstayed your previous visas so that you can come back in and you're being lawful and not trying to do any fraud in the country or anything like that. So they will check your background. And if you have done anything criminal in your past, they will take you into another office and ask you questions there. But if you're all green, like you haven't really done anything that will show up in their system, they will just stamp your passport, take your fingerprints, and then you're ready to work. So if you come in on that visa, you can stay 2 years for that specific company, and then before the time runs out, you should set up another interview at the same embassy where you went before is ideal, because then you know that they know the process. Many embassies are new to the E3 visa, so they wouldn't know exactly how to handle it without looking it up. And it can get a little strange if they have to look into the rules while you're there, which they had to do in Copenhagen the first time. But every time I go back now, they know the process, and it's been the same person actually every time. And I kind of joke about that when they say, oh, we haven't seen this visa in like 2 years. And I say, yeah, that was me the last time. Or like, I remember when you started here, you didn't know how to process the visa. So that's kind of fun, but at the same time, it helps you know that whatever worked last time is going to work again. And that's good to know. And I choose that location for that reason, as well as being close to family in Sweden. So when you look at these two visas, H1B and E3, they are slightly different, but some of the processing can be the same. The H1B is a 3-year increment visa, so there's some other rules attached to that, and it's under a lot of scrutiny. So the E3 visa is like, there are no complaints or issues with that. So it's going to continue most likely the way it is now. And H1B will have more and more restrictions on it, and it will change. Spouses can't work maybe in the future, and it's harder to get. You have to wait in line for a long time. A lot of people are competing for it. It's released once a year, and it's gone in like hours, basically. Or all the visas are gone in hours. So with the E3 visa, over 10,000, I think, available at any time during the year. You don't have to compete with people. The line is separate. The queue is only for you and other E3 applicants, and there are only maybe 2,000 that are used every year. So there's no line, basically, and you always have one available if you want one. You have to be a citizen of Australia, which is a limiting factor for most people, I'm sure. But if you're really serious about working in the US, you could go the route that I did, which is moving to Australia, living there for 4 years, fulfilling all the requirements to be there as a permanent resident, and applying for citizenship, and then using the E3 visa to work in the US for as long as you want, really, as long as you fulfill the E3 visa laws and rules, so that you can get a renewal every 2 years. So it is, I think, the most convenient way to work in the US if you don't have a green card. And I could apply for a green card, but I haven't really needed it. This is so convenient that I just haven't needed it at all. Like, I haven't felt like I need to apply for a green card. I might do it anyway, even though I've used the E3 visa for more than like 3-4 times. And it may not work in the future, so maybe I should be going the green card route. But It's hard to know how long you want to work somewhere and what your plans might be in the future. You know, being an Australian citizen, I really love Australia and I could work there. So I might do that for a couple of years too. The opportunities are different, of course, but you would just have to work as a business owner if you wanted to make good money in Australia. If you're an employee in Australia, you would make like an average income there, which is in Australian dollars, and the currency is not as strong. So if you're coming from the US and you're traveling to Australia, you will have more money to spend, and it's just better to be making US dollars. So that's why I'm working in the US right now, and it's a better opportunity. And I think this route, it took a while. I enjoyed every year that I lived in Australia, so it wasn't like I was just waiting to get out or to work in the US again. I really love Australia, and just working there is great. Really amazing nature and lifestyle. You may not make as much, but the lifestyle you have is really good. And everything is modern, everyone speaks English. Beaches are amazing, not many people around. Yeah, just wonderful place. And then when you're wanting to change the lifestyle a bit to better job opportunities, you move to the US and you work there in a big city and you save up some money, and then if you wanted to go back to Australia, you could use your money saved and buy something in Australia and get more value for your money, basically. So that's a good route, and at any time you can come back to the US anyway, and you can apply for an E3 visa again. And you can live in both places, basically, or move between the places as you wish. So it's a great place to be, and I think everyone should be looking into this route if they're really serious about working in the US, and also love to get a good lifestyle in Australia for a bit and kind of experience that life, which I highly recommend. And altogether, it just gives you more opportunities, and you can choose the best of whatever world you're interested in. So lifestyle or best work opportunities. It's really hard to combine both. Combining the Australian lifestyle with like beaches and the beautiful climate there and amazing nature with top paid jobs in a big company, it's not really gonna happen, which is a little bit sad because I would be living in Australia if that was possible. But the opportunities are just so much better in a big city in the US or in Silicon Valley. Yeah, you can still choose what you do for a couple of years and then save some money, go back, or just keep working at the top company in the US or working as a consultant for yourself in the US while you're on a work visa. So there's a way to do that, which is really interesting, and I didn't know that was possible, but it is. And I will be covering that in more details in another video, just because it's a bit of a special kind of case, and it's possible and you can do it, but you need to be. I only know how to do it on an E3 visa. You might be able to do it on an H1B visa, but I never tried that, so I can't really say if that works, but I don't see why it wouldn't work right now. But I would have to look into it a bit more.